Okay, so oh, Nancy, do you want to stay on camera? Um, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you all, like, because this is sort of a forum, isn't it? Where if you girls want to ask questions about parental alienation or anything like that, then I'll answer them. So, yeah. Do you have any questions at all about it?
I really am just a bit curious because this is my first time really hearing about the concept of parental alienation. And I'm curious if this is always in the case of a divorce or of a separation, or if it can be even if the parents stay together and they just badmouth each other to the point where it can be traumatic for the child.
Yeah, so it's usually in a high conflict divorce is when parental alienation will occur. So, and there's different levels of it as well. So, usually what we want to have happen is if people have decided that they're just not getting along, then we really, really, really want them to go and get couples therapy so that they can try and at least iron out some of the problems and really give it a good shot, because the divorce rate is so high. So 50% approximately, and then a second marriage is something a lot higher, and third marriage is like 85% or something likely. So it's very, very important that they go and get the couples counselling. With parental alienation, once the arguing starts, then we really, really want to put across the fact that we believe that kids need both parents equally, shared parenting as well. So, parental alienation is a lot of different factors. So, what I might do is I might just grab my book, because I've got a stack of them, and just go over some of what the parental alienation behaviors can be. So that'll be a little bit easier, because so the causes of parental alienation, so there are several psychosocial pathways to PA, and the most common is that the alienating parent, which there's two parents. One is the alienating parent and one is what we call the targeted parent. So the alienating parent indoctrinates the child to dislike and or fear the targeted parent. So they basically want to keep the children on their side. They want the children to align with them. They want the children to live with them. And parental alienation is basically trying to get rid of the other parent or denigrating the other parent, and there's a lot of factors involved with that. So PA most often arises in the context of a dispute between the parents over the child's custody. It can arise during the course of other types of conflicts, such as disputes between parents and a grandparent, or other family members, such as step parents or grandparents, may contribute to the creation of PA. So, on occasion, other individuals, such as therapists and child protection workers, may cause PA to occur by encouraging or supporting the child's refusal to have contact with the alienated parents. So sometimes if the parents go into therapy and the child wants to align with one of the with the alienating parent, it's very, very difficult to kind of diagnose. It's hard to pick up if you don't know the signs of alienation. So the child can present as just being very attached to the alienating parent. The alienating parent might be sitting in front of us and stroking the child's hair, and it just seems like they're very, very bonded. And then the targeted parent might be sitting over in the other chair, and the child just doesn't want to go sit near them. But that's if you don't know the symptoms of alienation, you'll just think that that's just a really sort of a great relationship between a parent and a child. It's more about the dynamics that are happening within the relationship. That's why it's super important that therapists are trained to spot the alienation signs so that they don't just align with the alienator and the child against the targeted parent and go, well, obviously the child likes that parent more, so I'm going to align with them. It's kind of the worst thing that can happen. So yes, on occasion, other individuals such as therapists and child protection workers may align with the supporting parent by encouraging or supporting the child's refusal to have contact with the alienated parent. And PA almost always arises in the context of intense conflict between the target parent and somebody else. So in circumstances of persistent, passionate conflict, it is possible that a child may develop a mild level of PA, even without over active brainwashing by one of the parents. That is, parental alienation without indoctrination can occur when the child gravitates to one parent and shuns the other parent in order to remove himself from the war zone of parental battles. And that's a quote by Burnett. And however, a common characteristic of severe levels of PA is intentionality. So, as Sorba repeatedly asserts, it is never unintentional, accidental, or naive behaviour by the alienating parent that leads to a full-blown case of severe PA. So, PA may be caused by an interaction of several psychosocial processes. The target parent may contribute in some way to the child's rejection. For example, the target parent may lack an involved, warm style of nurturance. He or she may have devoted insufficient time to parenting activities. For the diagnosis of PA, however, the intensity and duration of the child's refusal to have contact with the target parent is far out of proportion to the relatively minor weaknesses in that person's parenting skills. So the definition of high conflict is because PA usually occurs in the context of high conflict separation or divorce, it's important to have an understanding of the meaning of high conflict. So that topic was extensively reviewed by Glenn Gilmore in a background paper, High Conflict Separation and Divorce. And in short, the literature indicates that parental conflict is a major source of harm to children, whether the children are in intact families or the parents have separated or divorced. So children whose parents have separated or divorced, where there's a high level of conflict between the parents, display greater behavioural problems than children from low or medium conflict divorced families. So, so the characteristics of an alienating parent are really what we look for. So many alienating parents have demonstrable difficulties in their psychosocial functioning. So as long ago as 1985, Benedict and Shetsky reported that in high conflict custody cases, overly anxious parents tend to act out their mistrust for their former spouses. They wrote that anxious parents may transmit their anxiety to the child, causing the child to feel that he or she will not be safe visiting the other parent. Blush and Ross described causes of PA in which the personality of the alienating parent served as the force driving the alienation. In some other situations, Blush and Ross described a pattern they termed the justified vindicta. They wrote, in this instance, a hostile, emotionally expansive and dominant female has directly appealed to experts in both the mental health and legal communities. She frequently becomes insistent that formal punitive legal measures be taken via prosecution before reasonable proofs have been demonstrated. So, yeah, so there's PA typically occurs when a child is exposed to a pathogenic environment, a high degree of contact between his or her parents, although there may be variations in the manifestations of high conflict separation or divorce, and the following behaviours or external markers are commonly observed. So verbal acts such as abusive language or threatening violence, physical acts such as slamming doors, throwing things, endangering each other, actual or alleged domestic violence, actual or alleged child sexual abuse, child experiencing emotional endangerment, a history of access denial. So these are all the things that we look for when we're dealing with parents in high conflict divorce. So a history of access denial, family dysfunction such as abuse, substance abuse, severe psychopathology, involvement of child welfare agencies in the dispute, because a lot of the time the alienating parent will accuse the targeted parent of all sorts of things. So they'll accuse them of child sexual abuse, physically hurting the child, just being a terrible parent to the child. So they'll put all these accusations on them, and then what happens is they are then put on the back foot in court. So if there's an allegation of sexual abuse in a child custody dispute, basically the court stops, and then there's a big investigation into the parent who's been accused. It's usually the alienating parent accusing the targeted parent of sexually abusing the child or physically abusing the child. So we look for that as well. That's a bit of a giveaway, and then they really have to investigate whether that's happened or not. So often there's a lot of child welfare calls. So the agencies are called in often by the alienator because they'll be like, my ex isn't looking after the child, this is going on. So then they've got the light on them from the child welfare agencies as well. So there's all these indicators that we look for. Several or frequent changes in attorneys, they do that quite a lot too. So any attorney that's not really aligning with them, they'll get rid of. Any therapist that's not really aligning with them, they'll get rid of as well. They have very specific sets of behaviours that we watch for. The unusual number of times the case goes to court is another one, because sometimes the alienators, like the child, they can be dragging people into court for the slightest thing. So we watch for that pattern as well. The length of time it takes for the case to be settled, and the large number of documents such as diaries and affidavits that they collect. So they can be just on like this vendetta of a whole other level, just trying to get information about the other parent, what the other parent's doing, so that they can win custody. It can turn really bad. So, so researchers explain that alienating parents tend to be rigidly defended and very moralistic. So they can't a lot of the time see that anything that they're doing could harm the child. So these alienators perceive themselves to be flawless and virtuous, and they externalize responsibility onto others. They lack insight into their own behavior and the impact their behavior has on others. And the research literature consistently documents that psychopathology and personality disorders are present in a significant proportion of high conflict parents litigating over custody or access. And that's usually the parents who are the alienators have a psychological disturbance, including histrionic, paranoid, borderline, and narcissistic personality disorders. So we've got to look for those characteristics as well as psychosis, suicidal behavior, and substance abuse. They're all common among alienating parents. So there's so many tens of millions of children exposed to parental alienation in America, it's not funny. So high conflict divorce, like I said in my talk the other day, is a $50 billion a year industry in America. That's how much money the attorneys and judges and everybody else is making off families that are fighting. So we've really got to look at what is going on here. So, and parental alienation is just part and parcel of all of this. So, so there are all different methods for causing parental alienation. And so do you have any questions at this point, Nancy?
I do have a few. I'm thinking about this from my background in working in domestic violence and also working with kids in the foster care system.
Yep.
Who've been, through all kinds of abuse. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is, I mean, like I worked in the US in different domestic violence shelters and for different organizations. So I've kind of seen it from a lot of different perspectives in that field. And
Yeah,
one thing that I
okay.
know for sure is that there's a lack of training just in general with the people that work in this industry. And
Yeah.
there's just not a lot of training, not a lot of really requirements around the people that work with such a vulnerable population. But I'm wondering if, you know, it seems like training around the PA could also be beneficial, you know, for the caseworkers who are working in these domestic violence shelters, for the therapists who are working with domestic violence victims. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just surprised that I worked for so long in this field and I had never heard of this, you know. So I think that there's definitely a gap there. So I'm curious, what are people doing to get the word out about PA in this sector? Because it seems like, I mean, I'm thinking about, like, you know, the domestic violence victims that I've worked with, and it seems like, yeah, like so many times the abuser is doing exactly that, collecting all kinds of information, making all kinds of accusations to try to take the children away. So is that something that you see a lot? Do you think
Yeah,
that that
yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the time it's what we call the silver bullet. So once they've had the silver bullet fired at them, which is an allegation of child sexual abuse or domestic violence, then basically they really, the targeted parent now needs to prove that that hasn't happened. So all the light then goes on to them, and then they look like the terrible parent. And if the judge that's turning up that day doesn't understand the dynamic of parental alienation, it can go very, very badly. So, and there are other judges who don't believe in it. There are other judges who do. There are other judges who say if you even mention parental alienation in my courtroom, everything's going to stop and you're going to be, that they say to the lawyers, you're going to be out. So it's a minefield. I've never seen so much fighting going on between the professionals and the researchers and whose ideas right. And it's because it's known by other names too, parental alienation. It's known by a whole stack of other names. So, but parental alienation is basically the name that is the most commonly used. So I'm just kind of, as I talked about all of these the other day, but I didn't. I'll just see if I can find the other names that it's known by. There's so many, like there's a whole list, but or I might come back to that. But you mentioned domestic violence, so having said that, parental alienation and domestic violence go hand in hand because the enmeshment that the children are being exposed to is a form of child psychological abuse. So, therefore, it's family and domestic violence. And then the way that the targeted parent is being treated is also can be domestic violence. So, this part here, because I'm reading out of this book here, Parental Alienation by Lorandos, Burnett, and Richard Sorber. It says, although domestic violence typically includes physical aggression or assault, such as hitting, kicking, shoving, and slapping, it may also involve sexual abuse, emotional abuse, severe neglect, and economic deprivation. Whatever the manifestation of domestic violence, the underlying theme is that the perpetrator controls and dominates his or her victim. In addition to controlling the spouse or domestic partner, the perpetrator of domestic violence often endeavours to control the children also. So after the couple separates or divorces, the perpetrator may continue to control the children and alienate them from the former partner as a way of punishing him or her. So abusive ex-partners are likely to attempt to alienate the children from the other parent's affections by asserting blame for the dissolution of the family and telling negative stories. So they also use sabotage, They sabotage family plans by continuing criticism or competitive bribes. They undermine parental authority by explicitly instructing the children not to listen or obey. And Warshak described a pattern he observed in families that featured coercive control and domination. So, in other words, a parent continues harassing and controlling the ex-partner by manipulating the children to turn against the victim parent. So, causing child abuse, causing parental alienation is child abuse. So authorities in many countries have explained how a person who induces a child to experience PA is perpetrating child abuse. We know it's child psychological abuse. For example, Gardner wrote, whether such parents are aware of the negative impacts on the child, these behaviours of the aligned parent and his or her supporters. So that can mean the alienating parent and her parents or his parents and all their cousins. So what the alienators will often do is they'll collect alliances, and you'll see this in community. There'll be a couple separate and divorce, and there'll be all these rumors about the targeted parent going around, and there's just all these people aligning with the alienator. That's what they do. And sometimes the targeted parent just doesn't even want to get involved in that, but you can tell an alienator because they just want to talk badly about them at every chance they get. You know, he took the kids or she took the kids out on the weekend and it started to get cold, and the child might have come home and said, oh, it was a little bit chilly on the weekend, and then the alienator will say something like, so what did your mum or dad do? Did they like give you a jacket? And then the child will be like, well, no, because I wasn't that cold, but you were cold, right? And the alienator will start this. They'll go, but you were cold, right? And then the child will go, no, I wasn't very cold, but you just told me you were cold. And then the child will go, oh, okay, maybe I was a little bit cold. And then the alienator will run with that, and they'll be like, so they didn't give you a jacket when you were cold? Oh my God. And then they'll be on the phone. Like, she's just come back from a weekend with her father and he didn't even give her a jacket because she was really, really cold, and they'll blow it right up into this big story and they'll tell everyone, and then that spreads. That's very serious. And then the child gets really used to coming home, and they know what to say to the alienator. They know, because I was a child who used to be made to do this. So if I came home from a contact visit and I was getting pumped for information, you get taught, you give them the information that they want just to get them away from you. So it'd be like, okay, so if I tell the truth, like the fishing trip was really nice and we had a good time, that's going to upset her. So you've got to give them a bit of information so that they can like carry on and then go tell everyone, and it kind of gets the light off you. So this is what I used to have to do. You couldn't come home and just go, oh, we had a really nice trip. It was great. Dad was wonderful. It was like, well, it was pretty cold out there on the water. What do you mean it was cold on the water? Were you on the water? Did you have a life jacket on? Like, what was going on? And it's kind of like, oh my God. So you just get into a headspace where you just stop talking, because the alienator dysregulates all the time, and then there's this big fight going on. So every time you come home from a contact visit, it would be the same thing, and then she'd talk about that for weeks and tell everyone on the phone for weeks. And then he was a monster, and then next time we're going on a contact visit, it would be like, well, make sure you've got a jacket this time, and make sure he puts it on you, and make sure that you're safe and you've got a life jacket on. And then you're thinking, oh my God, maybe I'm not going to be safe, because like living in this world of enmeshment, we have to align with the alienator. So, or else our world is very, very unsafe. So that's why I talk from an adult child's point of view about what that space was like living in parental alienation, so that people get what it's like for us, because a lot of targeted parents don't understand why their children don't speak to them or their children turn against them. It's because we have to. If we don't, and we're still seen to be loving the other parent, missing the other parent, grieving over the other parent going, that's not in our best interest, because the alienator doesn't like that. We have to join the club, basically. We have to, if they're saying terrible things about our dad, targeted parent, we kind of have to not say anything or agree. We can't be sticking up for them or anything like that, not in moderate to severe alienation cases. Mild alienation cases, the children will sometimes have a voice and be heard, but if you're living with someone with personality disorders, you're in big trouble, basically. So yeah, it is a form of child abuse, and it says that psychological abuse includes acts of rejection, psychological terrorism, which is basically what they do to us, exploitation, isolation, and removal of the child from the social context. That's what they do as well. So in our case, we were moved interstate, away from him, away from his family, away from everybody we knew. We actually had our names changed and moved to a different place, so that illegally, so that he couldn't see us anymore. She now had us all to herself. So that isolation is definitely part of parental alienation too. And yeah, so basically, yeah, it's the psychological abuse may be the alienation of a parent figure by the other parent. So, involvement of mental health professionals who have no insights into parental alienation may exacerbate matters. Because sometimes, if we're, say, sitting in a therapist's room, we've got to have one eye on the alienator to make sure that we regulate them. If they dysregulate, our world is not a good place to be. It's full of domestic violence, psychological abuse, and we have to regulate them. So we'll often sit very close to them and agree with them, which to the untrained therapist looks like we've got a great relationship, but it's a relationship of enmeshment. It's a relationship of having a cult leader as a parent. It's very similar to cult behaviors, what we're exposed to. So, mental health professionals who have no insight into parental alienation may exacerbate the matters, and the longer the time spent with the alienating parent, the more likely the process of alienation will be consolidated. You get trained to within an inch of your life to know exactly what to say, exactly what to do to settle them. So, it's suggested that PAS be recognised as a form of child abuse. Accordingly, custody may be awarded to the innocent party, being the targeted parent, with sanctions potentially applied against the alienating party. So this is what the courts are doing now. So sometimes what they'll do is they'll give custody of the children to the targeted parent. They'll take them off the alienating parent, and they'll sanction the alienating parent. So depending on where you are, some parents are being threatened with jail. So like, it's just some parents just get off and the judge doesn't even notice. So we've just got a lot more work to do, really, a lot, so that people understand it. Yeah.
Great, thank you. That answers so many questions. I'm wondering what role social media plays in all of this, because I think, at least what I've seen is working in domestic violence, that these abusers will often smear the name of the parent partner on social media. And yeah, like you said, just get all of their mutual friends, family on their side and make it seem like the victim is a horrible parent.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult, and people need to be also aware of what parental alienation looks like in their families. So, because these alienators, I'll give you an example. Say, for my life, my alienating mother aligned all of her side of the family, all her friends, everyone who knew her against my father. So even now, at the age that I am, if my father comes into town, he's terrified of who might bring back up that past. That's how far reaching this stuff is. So with social media, yeah, it's very, very, very hard. It's very, very hard. There are a lot of groups on Twitter who are targeted parent groups. So a lot of men's groups for men, a lot of groups for women. So, and they can get really violent within those groups as well with each other, because there's so much pain and grief within the groups too, because parents who are not seeing their children, parents who are having their children say terrible things to them because they're being trained to do it, then just not expecting it is just a whole level of pain. So a lot of the targeted parents are dying by suicide. We get that quite a bit. We know about that. That's happening quite a bit because people who are being dragged through the courts, one of the court cases alone just played out in Australia at the moment. The bloke has paid $300,000 and he's still in court and he still hasn't got custody. That's how serious it is. So, and that's how much money it is to fight this as well. So we've got to keep talking about it. Social media, Twitter's huge for parental alienation. There's tens of thousands of people on the PA platforms. I have access to all of them, so I speak to all of them. They share all of my stuff. They're really, really awesome. I stay away from a lot of people who, there's also a faction who don't believe in parental alienation, who troll as well. So they can come after any of us who talk about PA as well. So, and that'll be, sometimes there's alienators in that group. They don't believe in parental alienation. It's not a thing. So it's a weird world, PA, and it's one of the leading researchers in the world over in the UK. Anywhere she goes, she actually has a bodyguard with her. So when she speaks, she's not targeted. She had to take an AVO out against one of the people who don't like what she's saying. So it's a very aggressive, it can be a very full-on world to work in and be a researcher in, because I research PA for my PhD. And I was kind of like, you got to watch out who you align with. You got to watch out who you talk to. You got to know who they're talking to. It's like this whole thing. And I'm like an adult child in it. And I'm like, hey guys, we've seen enough fighting. Can you please all stop fighting? Like, we've just been exposed to enough of it. You guys are supposed to be all helping us, but you're all fighting. So, I don't know. It's a hard world. I'm just trying to keep my head down and do my counselling, look after the, because I get a lot of other adult children of PA come in to see me, and I get a heap of people who don't even realise that they're adult children of PA. Heaps of them don't even realise it, that they've got a lot of the PA symptoms. So, yeah, and then we have to have the talk. And then they go, oh my God, is that what's going on? So it's big.
Yeah, thank you for that.
It's
That's
okay.
also interesting. And I think that it's so important, I think, in working in these sectors to just really take care of ourselves. So what do you do after heavy sessions like this?
Well, PA is my world. PA is my life. I've grown up in PA. It's all I know. Like all the time, every Christmas, every birthday, it's bloody PA crap going down, whether it's mum not wanting me to talk to dad, or you know, we're having Christmas, but he can't come. Like, it's just never stops. There's going to be a christening. Is he coming? And then we've got, if he comes, like, all of the people who align with her are all against him. So even in weddings, we have to like sit him and his friends over here, and it's just like boring. So I'm pretty used to it because it's all I've ever known. Like the day that they aren't fighting will be a very strange day because it just never stops. My dad doesn't participate in it. It's all driven by my mother, the alienator. Lives and breathes it, wants to know if he's unhappy, then she's happy. If he's not getting along with his wife, she's wrapped. Like, it's just weird behavior. You're dealing with personality disorders. So, I don't know. It's just boring. And self care, I don't know. I'm so used to talking about it all the time that it kind of doesn't bother me, which is good. So, because we do a lot of interviews with adult kids at PA, we interview a lot of researchers on my Humanly Possible channel on Facebook. So, we talk about PA like all the time. There's a huge group of us. So, it's just our normal. So, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
self care. We're pretty used to. You've either got to have very, very, very high resilience or just get out of the pond. Pretty
Yeah.
much. So tell me
Mm.
about the work that you used to do, Nancy. So you worked with kids in foster care, did you? Because we know that PA is a big time plays out in foster care, and sometimes even with the foster carers, they can they can use the children to regulate themselves and not want them to go back to the families, and then they'll alienate the families. So we see that too.
Yeah, and it is really heartbreaking. Yeah, I had two little ones, I think like 4 and 2 years old. And yeah, just seeing them actually have the visit with the bio mom, oh, it was just so heartbreaking. It's just terrible because you could see that the aunt that they were being taken care of by, she took very good care of them, but yeah, you could tell that she said a lot of things about the bio mom, and it was just heartbreaking because the kids, they were still so young and they just wanted to be with bio mom, even though bio mom was homeless and not doing the steps that she needed to be doing to get the kids back. So yeah, I think it probably is a lot in the foster care system. And yeah, both foster care, domestic violence, they're always gonna have like, spots in my heart. But yeah, no, it's hard, definitely. I think that's why I burned out actually, because they're just two really heavy fields. And that's why I was asking about self-care, because I don't think I was taking care of myself. So I burned out and I needed a good long break after all of that.
Yeah,
So yeah, no, it's really hard working with trauma, with victims of abuse, and yeah, especially when it's children, because they're just so innocent, they're just so vulnerable, and they just need someone to look after them. And when it's the actual parents who are causing that harm, I see it all the
yeah,
time when I worked in domestic violence, and just yeah, the poor women who have been through the ringer, and then it's even worse when the kids start blaming them. So yeah, no, it's really tough.
it's a
So,
minefield, isn't it? You've really got to know what you're looking for. Yeah.
mhm.
So the ones who are young or the ones who are new to the industry, we classify as at-risk workers because they're they don't know what they don't know. And they
Mhm.
try, a lot of them have got their heart in the right place and they can be over empathic and give too much and not learn how to kind of take their hats off at night and compartmentalize things, and debriefing, often doesn't happen, and supervision often doesn't happen. It's just you have to, you got to want to make sure that you're working with a good agency that's going to look after you and make
Mhm.
sure you're you can talk to people and trust that you can talk to them about what's happening for you emotionally and things like that. So I'm pretty lucky. I've worked in the industry 35 years, so I've got a pretty thick skin. So and I'm pretty good at compartmentalizing. So as far as self-care goes, I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at it. I've burnt out badly once. That was when I was getting my divorce. And then I went and worked at a dress shop for a year. But then I found myself counseling everyone when they were like in the dressing rooms. So you look sad. Do you want to talk about it? So, and then it's like, oh, for God's sake, I should probably go back into the industry. So, yeah, and then I did. So, yeah. So here comes Pip. Hey, Pip, having dinner or breakfast? Breakfast. Yeah. What are you eating? Can't hear you.
Bircher.
Bircher muesli. Yeah, right. You got milk on it?
No, it's got coconut milk on it.
Okay. Fair enough.
Hang on, I've done the wrong thing. I'm meant to be changing camera. Why is my camera not on? Hang on.
Yeah, I can see you. You're on our camera.
I know you can, but I haven't got the right camera on. I want my better camera on.
Okay.
External camera, which I tend to use. Are you not in the middle of a session at the moment?
We're kind of ending, so you can take over anytime you like.
Oh, right. Okay. Are you chairing today, or was Renee chairing?
Aisha's chairing.
Aisha. Oh, she's hiding down there.
Hi, Pip. Yeah.
There she is.
Hi.
Yeah, so I'm an
How you
intern
doing?
working for Renee at the moment. I'm good, thank you. So
Super.
I think there might have been an issue because on my call sheet for this evening, our next presenter at 7 p.m. is Neville Starrick. That's what I have.
I'm meant to be at 8, I think.
Yeah, so you're happy to hang around, but I'm not too sure if he'll be popping.
Funny, because I was on at the same time as last week. So your 7 p.m. is my 8 a.m. and that's meant to be me, I thought. Or am I at 9?
That's what I have.
If I'm 8.
Yeah, so on my call sheet.
8 English time, that is.
Yeah, it says 9 a.m. UK zone on mine. That's what I have.
Oh, okay. It's an hour later than it was the other day.
Yeah, just if you guys want to have a bit of a chit chat, I'll get in contact with Renee and then see if I can sort this out. Is that all right?
No, I can come back in an hour if you prefer. I thought I was on now, but I can come back in an hour. No, it's not a problem.
That's okay. I'll just sort it out.
Okay, super. So how's it been going so far?
Yes, good. I've just come in from a day's work. So, but it feels like it's been a really amazing week. And I think Renee's done a brilliant job pulling together another conference. I don't know that I would want that responsibility, but especially coordinating countries. But yeah, so I think it's all good. I think. Yeah, and some of the talks I think I've missed because I've had to go back into uni at different times, so I'll watch them back. And yes. So where are you, Nancy?
Yeah, I'm in Sydney.
Oh, you're in Sydney like me. Okay. Oh, yeah. South of Sydney anyway. Yes, I'm down in the Highlands.
Oh, okay. So not in Sydney, right? Southern Highlands?
Yeah.
Okay.
Between Sydney and Canberra.
Yeah, I did a trip there last month.
Oh, did you? What were you down here for?
Oh, we just did a random trip, see a bit of New South Wales, did 4 days in Southern Highlands.
Oh, okay.
Nothing nice, just beautiful. Yeah, we really liked it.
Yeah, good.
You're allowed to do trips. We're not allowed to do trips.
Yeah, we are.
Anywhere.
Oh, yes. How's the COVID going over there, Pip? Are they getting it even remotely under control? What's it like at the moment?
No, because we got a stupid government.
Right. Okay.
And what happened was I came back from Sydney on the 1st of February. I came by Hong Kong, and all 300 of us on the plane from Hong Kong were wearing masks. And you might ask why. And the reason why, of course, was because of COVID, 1st of February. Here we are on the 26th of November. And when I got to Heathrow, everybody looked at us as if we were mad. And had the bumbling Boris government taken notice of how the Far East was managing the outbreak back then, Hong Kong's had very few deaths, despite being a very, very concentrated country. And it took bumbling Boris till about September to say, oh yes, perhaps we ought to be wearing masks, etc. Now I know they're not the whole answer, but it was, New Zealand did a lot better because they locked down.
Yeah, they moved
a lot better because we locked down. Yeah, and we're back worse than we were in April because of bumbling Boris's. Oh, and then Dominic Cummings, who was his aide at the time, went off on you might have heard about this story. He's the most detested man in Westminster, and he in about April had COVID and thought he would drive to the coast to test his eyesight 30 miles each way with his children, child and wife in the car. So if you've got a problem with your eyesight, you don't drive at all, let alone go. And then he got given an hour and a half by government in the Downing Street back garden to justify why he'd done this activity when everybody else was locked down, and came up with this ridiculous thing about he was testing his eyesight. So of course nobody's taken anything seriously since. We just go, well, Dominic Cummings, what do you want? Anyway, it's very serious.
Bumbling Boris, is that his nickname, is it?
Difficult,
well, it is, yeah.
Situation.
And we have a lot of COVID in the area. In Brighton, we're lower than anybody else, but I know people who've died. I know lots of people who've had it. And there go I, but for the grace of God, I say.
Okay, well, I think Neville's due to speak. So hi, Neville.
Hi, Neville.
Welcome, Neville. So I've actually have double checked, Pip, and you will be presenting in an hour. So you're more than welcome to stay and enjoy the presentation, or pop back in an hour, whatever works for you. And thank you so much for Alyse.
Well, I'll turn my video on.
Presentation. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to stop this recording now and start the next one so Neville can start presenting.